Do you know of someone who ruined their life in just a matter of minutes? If so, how did they do it? Excluding accidents and fights. Guy got intoxicated at corporate holiday party and made out at party consensual with work wife who was a one-rank subordinate. HR, unimpressed with violation of zero tolerance policy, fired for cause. Actual wife, unimpressed with excuses, filed for divorce. Work wife, similarly unimpressed, filed for double divorce. Well, you lose her automatically when you lose such work. Work wife husband is a baffling concept to me. Conceptually, it sounds like foreshadowing for cheating, and in practice it likely is. But people seemingly casually just joke about having one and have their partners be fine with it. She sold pills that she knew contained fentanyl to 2 people. The first one died. She found out, sold the same pills to another person. That person died. Boom. Life in prison. The texts between her dealer are what led to her arrest and exposed that she had full and complete knowledge that the pills would result in an overdose. Much deserved life in prison. That is diabolical. What the fuck? Yeah. What sucks is that this all happened a year after I left. It took a year to go from a very likable and caring person to an absolute junkie. I have an even worse story, but that guy OD'd and I honestly think he deserved much worse. Shot up a girl who never tried heroin before, watched her OD, put her in a wheelbarrow in the front of a trap house, and left. Piece of shit. It's wild what drugs do to a person's psyche. I've pissed some people off saying this, but it's almost like it strips their humanity. Yes, with my brother, I noticed his same behaviors and mannerisms in one of my husband's cousins who was also a junkie. They didn't know each other, but acted alike. It's like the addiction itself is walking around in their skin. When I was in my early 20s, I worked as an energy worker in field service. One of my really close friends was someone who I was on calls with regularly. A project lead pressured both of us to work on equipment we weren't qualified or trained to work on, and we unfortunately relented. We were halfway done with the task, and I walked out to the truck to grab water bottles. Halfway to the truck, I hear a giant buzz, then a huge bang, then screaming. By the time I get back to the generator room, he's fully on fire. The cabinet had arc blasted, and he had been right in the way. By the time I got our fire blanket from the truck, he was basically fully engulfed. I was able to put him out and get him into as much of a recovery position as I could, and then I called our shop to get them to organize rescue to our location. He somehow survived 80 to 90% second and third degree burns, but coded so many times he ended up with severe brain damage from oxygen deprivation. He lost his eyes, his sense of smell and taste, and much of his sense of touch. I think he lost his hearing too from the noise of it too. He's in a vegetative state in a full-time care facility now. I had frequent nightmares for years about it. The thing that stuck with me the most was since the arc blast had hit him basically right in the face, it basically boiled his skin off. I ran in and saw him ripping large pieces of his face off while he tried to bat the flames off. The smell and sight of that never goes away. And did anything happen to the dumb of supervisor that had no business putting y'all in that position? Usually when there is a severe injuries or fatalities in the workplace, the company and the supervisors will get a monetary fine. The companies will then make a deal with the supervisors involved to save their jobs and pay their fines in return for a favorable testimony. The last time that there was a fatality at my workplace, 3 supervisors and the company got charged $1 million fines. The 3 supervisors are still instructing the workforce to this day, 8 years later. Paul was one of my closest friends. When you were tested, under the worst pressure, you did everything right, and I hope that brings you some small comfort. Cousin dove into the shallow end of the pool while drinking, paralyzed, and life was never the same. My great aunt also dove into a pool's shallow end and broke her neck as a teen, I think. Also paralyzed for most of her life, living into her 70s. She had a decent life for what happened, but yeah, definitely lost a lot of opportunities. One of my high school teachers lost her son when he was drunk and dove into a pool from the 2nd floor. He didn't notice the pool was empty. My husband's godson did the same thing. He and his friends had broken into the pool area of a school which was closed for the summer, and no one noticed that they'd drained the pool. He's been a quadriplegic for going on 36 years now. I can always figure out how long it's been because my husband's ex was giving birth to their daughter at the same time, and at the same hospital he was airlifted to. An ex-girlfriend of mine, lovely person, was out at a restaurant bar with a friend one night. They had a meal and played pool. When they left, for some reason she drove his car. I don't know why, but I know that when she and I were together, she asked to drive my car just for the experience of driving a different car. Maybe that was it. And I imagine driving in someone else's car, you take a few extra seconds to adjust the seat and the mirrors and get your bearings. Unbeknownst to her, a teenager was driving a Mustang nearby. He was pissed because someone passed him a mile earlier, and his ego was hurt. He decided to catch up to the guy and floored the Mustang, getting up to speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. As my ex pulled out of the parking lot to cross the median, She had no way of seeing the Mustang barreling toward her over a hill. He crashed into her, killing her and her passenger. 2 seconds earlier or later, and they would not have made contact. I went to his trial. I remember her poor mother sitting there stone-faced while testimony was given. Several lives were ruined in that moment. My ex was only 26. She never got married, never had kids, never found her way in life. Any word on the killer? Did he get convicted? Yeah, he did. I don't remember how much time he was sentenced to, but he did go to prison for it. Edited to add, I had to look it up. He was 17 years old at the time. He was tried as an adult, and for killing both people, he still only got 4 years in prison. Damn, that's crazy. A drunk driver killed my dad, T-boned him 2 blocks from my house, and I wasn't in the car because I was exhausted after school. He got 4 years in prison, 10 years probation. I thought that was stupid short, and everyone was always like, but he didn't mean to kill him. That's an injustice. He was excited to see a band. He decided to slide down the escalator wall between the up and down as he went to Subway. Tripped, fell 2 stories-ish, and that was the end. In a mildly similar thing, also a horrified witness. College frat party, very chill vibe, not a rager. Mildly drunk kid, mid-conversation, decides to hop up and have a seat on the railing of a deck we were out on. He hopped up and did one of those panicked flails that you do when your chair is about to tip backwards on you, falls backwards off the deck, lands on his head. Medevac to the nearest trauma center. Did not make it through the night. I didn't know him, just seen him around campus. What was really sad to see was most people assumed he was being a drunk idiot at a raging frat party and wound up doing some dumb stunt. He really just made a minor drunken mistake, such as miscalculation, and paid for it with his life. I knew someone who got shit-faced drunk. Big dude. Passed out. Friends helped him get back to dorm room. They found him dead in the morning, choked on his own vomit. Brutal, man. I had a friend who was in a pretty bad place beginning of college. Lost a parent the year before. We all went out drinking one night. He usually hits it really hard. He crashed in our room on the floor. They used to make fun of me because I'm a notoriously light sleeper. Middle of the night, I hear this really weird noise that I can't place. I'm laying there for a minute in the dark, trying to figure out that it is. I rolled over and flashed my phone light and see my friend flat on his back, actively aspirating on his vomit. We turned him over and it was okay, but he woke up the next morning and asked why his pillow was in the sink covered with vomit. Had no idea what happened. He was pretty shaken up by it. I think it actually helped him clean up his act a little. Damn, you saved that dude. And I'm glad he was okay, but terror cringing at him not getting checked on by a doctor after that. He easily could have gotten some nasty shit rotting, causing infection in his lungs from that. I had a friend who got into his car drunk with 5 other people, flipped the car, and killed one of the passengers. He went from being this charming, good-looking, likable guy to a shut-in and was seen as a monster to a lot of people in the community. He ended up committing suicide about a year after the accident. He was seriously broken about what had happened. I've done background checks as part of my job, and it's honestly surprising how many people have DUIs. We really don't take them seriously enough as a country, considering how dangerous they are. It's terrible when people are ostracized, but the other end looks even worse. I went to high school with a girl who strayed into oncoming traffic after a party. It killed the other girl in the car with her and broke her leg. Everyone acted like she was some sort of returning hero who had just been in a random accident, and it was just so sad her friend had died. Like no one was at fault. Ireland used to be a drink-drive country, rural population, only way to socialize and get home in the 80s, 90s. Deaths were out of control, so in fairness, the government clamped down. Huge advertising campaigns, heavy sentences with increasingly low limit thresholds. It's incredibly frowned upon now, and people often lose their license for years, and often their jobs. When I lived in America, it was like time traveling. One guy told me he had multiple DUIs previously and was back driving again. When I was a teenager, my dad and this dude had beef with each other. My dad was dating this guy's ex-wife, and he didn't like that. They bumped into each other at a bar and exchanged some words. My dad left the bar, and the dude was waiting for him outside. A car rolled up, and somebody handed the dude a handgun. He pointed at his head from about 2 feet away and pulled the trigger. Luckily for my father, the gun jammed. My pops wasn't taking any chances, so he took off running. The dude cleared the gun and emptied the clip, missing all but one shot that hit my dad in the back. My dad was already downtown, and the hospital was only a couple blocks away. Or so he thought. Unluckily for my padre, the hospital was under renovation and preparing for relocation. When he saw that it was under construction, he slumped over and called 911 for an ambulance. The surgeons removed his kidney because it was too damaged to repair, and survived. The dude got an attempted murder charge and almost 15 years in prison. Edit. Thanks for the kind thoughts. My dad is no longer with us due to complications from COVID, but I'm sure he would have found it entertaining to hear that so many people liked his story. I can remember seeing his stitched up stomach. The surgeons opened his belly up from the sternum down to his waist. It was super gnarly. To answer some questions, to my knowledge, they never found the accomplice who handed him the gun. I agree that he deserved more time. I think the maximum sentence for a first-degree attempted murder charge is 20 years. He may have gotten a shorter sentence because he was a first-time offender. I'm not exactly sure on that. Kid I went to high school with wasn't going to graduate and decided to protest by speeding and doing wheelies on the road in front of the school. On his third round, he passes a pickup truck, hooks his leg on the bumper, and is thrown from the bike right on his head, snapping his neck. School posthumously graduated him, edited to help clear up questions. Happened in 1995 on the northern Illinois Prairie, southern Wisconsin border. I noticed his intelligence has been questioned. Let me share an additional anecdote. His nickname was Bob. When asked what it was backwards, he replied without guile or irony that it was oob. Whether you agree with the school's action in graduating him or not, locally, it was considered window dressing as the whole town knew of what happened within hours of his accident. Guy I went to high school with was kicked out of his college ROTC and moved back home. After some time of living at home, his dad walked into his bedroom and went off about him being a lazy ass and needing to do something with his life. He decided he was going to take his gun and rob a bank. Supposedly, the gun wasn't loaded, but he did successfully rob the bank and get away. Some time went by. He moved out of his parents' house and started living it up. He eventually told someone he trusted. That person turned him in. He was arrested and charged. He got a count for every person who was in the bank because he had a gun. You can decide if he ruined his life when he decided to rob the bank or when he decided to tell someone that he did it. The man that killed my grandfather had never so much as had a speeding ticket. He was married with kids and fell behind on rent. My grandfather, that was in his 80s, worked for the company that rented this guy his home for extra money. Grandpa couldn't reach him about his rent, so went and did a welfare check. The guy panicked and murdered my grandfather. Destroyed more than one life in a matter of 30 seconds. Pretty successful woman at a company I worked got drunk. Took an Uber home from a party. Realized she left the keys to her apartment behind, so she decided to climb up to her second-story balcony to get her spare set. She slipped, paralyzed herself, couldn't work for a year, racked up ridiculous medical debt, and the pandemic left her position useless, so she was let go. My father punched a window out of anger, severed the artery and ligament in his bicep, almost bled out, effectively removed his ability to work with his hands, which was the one thing he had going for him. He then became a moody pos alcoholic. Actually, he always was one, but way worse after this. He then beat the neighbor across the road with a pipe after they got drunk and got into an argument. He was arrested and went to jail. My parents lost the family home. They ended up splitting. I went no contact with him. 2 years later, he took his life. Jesus Christ, dude. Hope you're healing all right and have found a peaceful way forward. It changed me as a person, to be honest. I see pictures of myself before that event, and I see someone different. It's hard to see the good in the world when someone you grew up idolizing does everything you stand against morally as a person. However, I have a strong support network, and every day is a new day. I continue to remind myself what I am grateful for. My former roommate had a great job, made great money, had his own house in which I rented a room. The only problem was he was a serious alcoholic and a shitty person. He'd get up at 4:30 to go to work, get off at 2, and then hit the bar until 11. Every single night. Unless he had a girl coming over. Then he'd come home at 10, do a quick cleanup of his filthy room, and have obnoxious and very inconsiderate loud sex. He hit a guy who was riding his bike drunk driving his way home one night. Fled the scene, came home, and went to the neighbor's house and said he hit a pole. The neighbor called the police, and on the way to the house, they found the guy he hit with his front bumper next to the body. He went to jail for vehicular homicide, did 6 months, and got out. Now he lives with his parents and can't get a job because his story is a little infamous in our town. His sister took over his mortgage and lives in his house now. All he does all day is cry on Facebook about how life isn't fair and bad mouths the guy he killed. 6 months for vehicular homicide while drunk plus leaving the scene. WTF. His sentence was originally 10 years, 7 suspended. The entire punishment was a travesty of justice and a slap to the face of the man he killed and his family. I heard once, if you want someone dead, do it with a car. Vehicular homicide is a slap on the wrist compared to murder in any degree. Third-hand story from a former co-worker. One of the other Marines at the base where he was stationed in the 90s stole plastic explosives from the test range, and tried to sell them at a bar that was literally line of sight from the base. The first person to show any interest was an NCIS officer. That guy might still be in Leavenworth. Lit a cigarette in an oil change pit when he was a teen. Flammable waste was illegally being stored down there along with a lot of oil. R.I.P. A guy I went to high school with was playing bottle rocket tag with some friends and took one to the eye which blinded him. He was a senior ready to go to college on a baseball pitching scholarship. Bottle rocket what? That Aussie kid who, on a dare, ate a slug that had a parasite, developed a gnarly brain infection, ended up in a coma for a year, woke up paralyzed, then passed away in 2018. He was only 19 when it happened. Security company. This happened before I worked there, but some coworkers told me the story. Guy was doing well at his job, got lots of promotions, on his way to lieutenant, but was too into his job, and got a police scanner that he would listen to. One day, just as he was getting off work, a high-speed chase went by. He hoped in his personal vehicle with his firearm, got to the front of the chase, blocked the suspect in, and pulled his gun. Suddenly, the cops were much more interested in the crazy guy with a gun. Got hit with several felony charges. When you give paramilitary ranks to security workers, you're encouraging this kind of delusion. Let's take a group of guys who wish they were cops but can't meet the standards to be one. Then give them guns and a play badge, and then give them police ranks. That will make them very good at standing at the Kroger exit to deter shoplifting. Some guy tried to come into my nightclub when he was clearly too drunk. I made the call to not let him in, so he starts shouting at me and tries to aggressively walk up to me. I put my hands up in defense, and he's pushing back against me. Then the dude lunged at my boss next to me, so my boss shoves him. The guy tumbles backwards and slams the back of his head on a curb, paralyzed from the neck down forever. Tried to take my boss to court for $15 million, but the camera showed this guy instigating everything. How did your boss take it? I can't imagine it was easy for him. I think the whole legal process lasted like 8 months. Dude was shitting bricks constantly from stress. It actually made it harder for us to do our job as bouncers in a college town because my boss was so paranoid about something like this happening again. It's why as a bouncer I don't shove, I wrap people up or get a firm grip on the chest of their shirt. I've purposefully swept out people's legs, but I've been able to keep them from slamming full force into the ground. A kid I went to high school with didn't look both ways when he was crossing the street on his skateboard. A motorcyclist hit and killed him. The motorcyclist was hospitalized and lived. I went to high school with a guy that would never look both ways. Or, anyway, would literally walk directly into traffic without breaking stride. Crossing a busy road to a market at lunch every day. So many times of cars locking up their brakes and sliding, or having to swerve to avoid him, but he never once got hit. Of course, he signed up for the army and did a few tours after graduation. Last I saw, somehow still alive. Local police chief did a hit and run over the weekend on a parked, unattended vehicle, in his department vehicle. By the end of the day, Tuesday, he was resigning. State police investigated and issued a bunch of summary offense citations. DUI was not among the charges. No one was hurt, and the guy resigned. But, there's only one reason you drive away from hitting something after midnight. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.